The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training compound as Sarah Mitchell stepped off the transport vehicle. Her boots hit the dusty ground with quiet determination, and she adjusted the strap of her rifle case across her shoulder. Around her, dozens of elite soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, their voices carrying the rough camaraderie of men who had seen combat together. Sarah had earned her place here through years of grueling training and exceptional marksmanship scores. At 28, she was one of only 3 women selected for the Joint Special Operations Sniper program. Her record spoke for itself, top of her class in precision shooting, survival training, and tactical assessment. Yet as she walked toward the registration building, she could feel the weight of skeptical stares following her every step. The compound buzzed with activity, as over 200 military personnel from various branches had gathered for this intensive 3-week program. Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marine Scouts, and International Special Forces units all converged on this remote facility in Nevada. The program was designed to push even the most experienced snipers to their limits, testing not just their shooting abilities but their mental fortitude under extreme conditions. As Sarah approached the check-in desk, conversation seemed to quiet around her. She maintained her composure, having grown accustomed to being the subject of curiosity and doubt throughout her military career. The sergeant at the desk processed her paperwork with professional courtesy, but she noticed how his eyes lingered on her slight frame, probably wondering if she could handle the physical demands ahead. Her assigned bunk was in a building with 40 other participants. The moment she entered the barracks, the atmosphere shifted noticeably. Some soldiers nodded respectfully, recognizing her rank and qualifications. Others exchanged glances that clearly questioned her presence. Sarah had learned long ago that her performance would speak louder than any words of introduction. She methodically unpacked her gear, each item placed with military precision. Her custom rifle case drew attention from nearby bunks. Several soldiers wandered over, curious about her equipment. Sarah answered their technical questions with quiet confidence, discussing barrel specifications and scope adjustments with the expertise that had earned her instructor status at her previous assignment. Among the observers was Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, a decorated Navy SEAL with over 15 combat deployments. His reputation preceded him, an aggressive leader known for his direct approach and unwavering confidence in high-pressure situations. Morrison had built his career on split-second decisions and had little patience for what he perceived as weakness or hesitation. As evening approached, the participants gathered in the main briefing hall for their initial orientation. The program director, a weathered colonel with over 30 years of sniper experience, outlined the challenging weeks ahead. Night operations, extreme weather conditions, moving targets at unprecedented distances, and psychological pressure scenarios would test every aspect of their abilities. Sarah listened intently, mentally preparing herself for what lay ahead. She had trained for moments like this her entire career, but she knew that proving herself among this elite group would require everything she had learned and more. The stakes were higher than just personal achievement. Her performance would influence how future women in similar roles would be received and treated. During the break between briefings, small groups formed naturally as participants discussed their backgrounds and expectations. Sarah found herself in conversation with a British SAS sergeant and a German counterterrorism specialist. Their discussion about long-range ballistics and environmental factors was interrupted when Morrison approached their group. His presence commanded attention immediately. Even in casual conversation, there was an intensity about him that suggested constant readiness for action. He listened to their technical discussion for a few moments before addressing Sarah directly. His questions were pointed, professional, but carried an underlying tone of skepticism that seemed to question not just her abilities, but her right to be there. Sarah responded to each inquiry with measured precision, demonstrating her knowledge without appearing defensive. She had learned that overreacting to doubt only reinforced negative assumptions. Instead, she let her expertise speak through calm, accurate responses that gradually shifted the dynamic of the conversation. The evening concluded with equipment inspections and preliminary range assessments. Each participant had to demonstrate basic proficiency at various distances before being cleared for the advanced portions of the program. Sarah's performance was flawless, her shots grouping tightly at distances that challenged even experienced marksmen. As participants returned to their bunks, The initial dynamics of the group were already becoming clear. Some had immediately accepted Sarah as a peer based on her demonstrated skills. Others remained skeptical, adopting a wait-and-see attitude. Morrison fell into a third category, those who seemed determined to test her limits at every opportunity. Sarah cleaned her rifle with methodical care, a ritual that had become second nature over years of military service. Around her, conversations continued about the challenges ahead, speculation about the most difficult scenarios they might face, and quiet assessments of their fellow participants. She contributed when addressed, but primarily focused on her own preparation. The first day had gone as expected, professional but guarded interactions, subtle challenges to her presence, and the beginning of what would undoubtedly be an ongoing process of proving herself. Sarah had faced similar situations throughout her career, and had learned to channel doubt into motivation. Tomorrow would bring their first real test, and she intended to be ready for whatever came next. Dawn broke cold and clear over the training range as the first official day of competition began. Sarah had been awake since 4 in the morning, following her usual pre-mission routine of mental preparation and equipment checks. Her rifle gleamed in the early light, every component verified and calibrated to perfection. Around her, other participants went through their own rituals of preparation. The morning's challenge was designed to establish baseline capabilities under pressure. Each sniper would attempt a series of increasingly difficult shots while being observed and evaluated by instructors. The targets ranged from 600 to 1,200 yards, with environmental factors like crosswinds and elevation changes adding complexity to each shot. Morrison was among the first to take his position at the firing line. His approach was characteristically confident, settling into his shooting stance with the fluid movements of someone who had performed this routine countless times in life-or-death situations. His first shot rang out across the range, followed by the spotter's confirmation of a center mass hit. The pattern continued with mechanical precision, each shot finding its mark with the consistency that had made him legendary among his peers. Other participants followed, each demonstrating the high level of skill that had earned them places in the program. The British SAS sergeant managed an impressive grouping despite gusty wind conditions. A Marine scout sniper adapted quickly to the unfamiliar rifle system provided for the exercise. Success rates were high as expected from such an elite group, but subtle differences in technique and mental approach were already becoming apparent to the observing instructors. When Sarah's turn arrived, she approached the firing line with the same quiet confidence she had displayed since arrival. Her movements were economical and precise as she settled into position, adjusting her scope for the current atmospheric conditions. She had studied the performance of previous shooters, noting how the wind patterns affected bullet trajectory at different ranges. Her first target sat at 800 yards, a challenging distance made more difficult by the morning thermals beginning to rise from the desert floor. Sarah controlled her breathing, allowing her heart rate to settle into the rhythm she had perfected over years of training. The crosshairs settled on target, and she began her final breathing sequence before the shot. The rifle's report echoed across the range, followed by a brief pause as the spotter confirmed the hit. Center ring. Sarah smoothly worked the bolt action, chambering the next round while maintaining her sight picture on the second target. Her routine was methodical but efficient, each movement flowing naturally into the next without wasted motion or hesitation. As she progressed through the series of increasingly distant targets, a small crowd of participants and instructors gathered behind the firing line to observe. Word had spread about the female sniper's performance, and curiosity drew even those who had initially dismissed her presence. Her shooting demonstrated not just accuracy but adaptability, as she made subtle adjustments for each target's unique challenges. Morrison watched with growing interest as Sarah engaged targets that had challenged even the most experienced shooters in the group. Her technique was different from the aggressive, rapid engagement style he favored. Where he relied on instinct and speed, she displayed patience and calculation. Both approaches were effective, but they represented fundamentally different philosophies of marksmanship. The final target of the morning session sat at the maximum range, 1,200 yards in challenging wind conditions. Several participants had struggled with this shot, managing near misses that would have been acceptable in many contexts, but fell short of the program's exacting standards. Sarah studied the target through her scope, observing the mirage patterns that revealed air currents invisible to the naked eye. She made careful adjustments to her scope, compensating for the bullet's trajectory over the extended distance and the wind's effect during the projectile's flight time. The mathematics of long-range shooting became more complex with distance, requiring calculations that accounted for factors most people never considered. The Coriolis effect of Earth's rotation, air density changes with altitude, even the rifle's natural harmonic vibrations. The shot came as a surprise to observers who had grown accustomed to lengthy preparation times for such difficult shots. Sarah's trigger pull was smooth and consistent, the rifle settling back into position as the bullet began its journey toward the distant target. The seconds stretched as everyone waited for the spotter's call, the projectile's flight time seeming endless. Center ring, came the confirmation, followed by spontaneous applause from several participants. Sarah maintained her position long enough to ensure the rifle was safe before standing and clearing her firing point. Her expression remained composed, showing neither surprise nor satisfaction at the successful shot. It was simply the expected result of proper preparation and execution. As participants moved toward the debriefing area, conversations buzzed with discussion of the morning's performances. Several shooters had exceeded expectations while others had identified areas needing improvement. Sarah's performance had clearly made an impression, earning respectful nods from participants who had initially questioned her place in the program. Morrison approached as she was securing her rifle case, his expression unreadable. Their conversation was brief but pointed, touching on technical aspects of her shooting technique and her background in long-range precision shooting. His questions were probing but professional, seeking to understand the methodology behind her consistent accuracy. The afternoon brought classroom sessions on advanced ballistics and environmental factors affecting precision shooting. Sarah contributed meaningfully to discussions, sharing insights from her experience training other snipers and her extensive study of long-range marksmanship theory. Her knowledge base proved broader than many had expected, covering not just practical shooting skills but the scientific principles underlying precision marksmanship. As the day concluded, the initial dynamics within the group had already begun to shift. Sarah's consistent performance was earning her recognition as a serious competitor rather than a curiosity. However, she knew that one successful day would not be sufficient to fully establish her credibility among this elite group. The challenges ahead would be more demanding, and the pressure would only increase as the program progressed. Evening found her once again methodically cleaning and checking her equipment, preparing for whatever tomorrow might bring. Around her, other participants engaged in similar routines, the shared focus on preparation creating a sense of mutual respect regardless of initial prejudices. The program was designed to push everyone to their limits, and success would ultimately depend on skill, preparation, and mental toughness rather than assumptions or stereotypes. The third day of the program brought a dramatic shift in both weather and interpersonal dynamics. Heavy clouds rolled in overnight, bringing gusty winds that would challenge even the most experienced marksman. Sarah woke to the sound of rain pelting against the barracks windows, knowing that the conditions would test everyone's ability to adapt their techniques to hostile environmental factors. During breakfast, she overheard Morrison addressing a small group of his fellow SEALs, his voice carrying across the mess hall with characteristic confidence. His comments about the changing weather conditions quickly evolved into broader observations about adapting to unexpected challenges in combat situations. While his words weren't directly aimed at Sarah, his repeated references to soldiers who couldn't handle real pressure seemed pointed enough to draw glances in her direction. The morning's exercise involved moving targets at extended ranges, with shooters required to engage multiple objectives while repositioning between shots. The scenario simulated real-world combat conditions, where snipers might need to eliminate several threats quickly while avoiding detection. Success required not just accuracy but speed, adaptability, and the ability to maintain composure under intense time pressure. Morrison was scheduled to demonstrate the exercise first, his reputation ensuring that most participants gathered to observe his technique. His approach was aggressive and decisive, engaging targets with rapid precision that reflected years of combat experience. His shots were accurate and his movements efficient, completing the course in a time that would be difficult for others to match. As he finished, Morrison's confidence was evident in his posture and expression. He made a point of checking his time with the range officer, ensuring that nearby participants could hear the impressive result. His performance had been undeniably excellent, setting a standard that would challenge even the most skilled competitors. When Sarah's turn arrived, the wind had intensified significantly, creating conditions that would test every aspect of her shooting skills. The targets moved in unpredictable patterns, requiring split-second calculations to determine lead angles and timing. Rain began to fall more steadily, adding another variable to an already complex challenge. Sarah approached the first firing position with methodical precision, despite the pressure of being observed by the entire group. Her initial target acquisition took slightly longer than Morrison's rapid engagement, leading to whispered comments about her slower pace. However, her first shot found its mark precisely, demonstrating that her careful approach was yielding results. As she moved between positions, Sarah's movements were economical, but not rushed. While others might have been intimidated by the time pressure and difficult conditions, she maintained the same steady approach that had served her well in previous challenges. Her shots continued to find their targets with consistency that impressed the observing instructors. Morrison watched with growing irritation as Sarah's methodical approach proved effective despite his belief that her slower pace indicated hesitation or uncertainty. His experience had taught him that speed and aggression often determine survival in combat situations, and her deliberate movements conflicted with his understanding of effective sniper tactics. The tension became more apparent during the afternoon's classroom session on urban warfare scenarios. Morrison challenged several of Sarah's contributions to the discussion, questioning her practical experience with the situations being analyzed. His challenges were professionally framed, but carried an undertone of skepticism that hadn't been present in earlier interactions. Sarah responded to each challenge with calm professionalism, backing her positions with specific examples from her training and operational experience. However, the dynamic was clearly shifting from professional competition to something more personal. Other participants began to sense the growing tension, with some choosing sides while others remained neutral observers. The situation escalated during evening equipment maintenance when Morrison made a casual comment about soldiers who looked good on paper but couldn't perform when lives were on the line. His words were ostensibly general observations about military preparedness, but his timing and tone made his intended target clear to everyone within earshot. Sarah's response was measured but firm, addressing his concerns about practical experience while maintaining professional courtesy. She outlined her background in training combat snipers and her deployment history, demonstrating that her qualifications extended well beyond classroom achievements. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Morrison's more aggressive approach to the discussion. The exchange drew attention from other participants, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere in the barracks. Some tried to diffuse the tension with humor, or by changing the subject, while others seemed content to watch the developing conflict unfold. The instructors, while aware of the growing friction, maintained their policy of allowing participants to resolve interpersonal issues independently, unless they interfered with training objectives. As the evening progressed, the divide within the group became more apparent. Several participants had begun to align themselves either with Morrison's skeptical perspective or with growing respect for Sarah's consistent performance. The British SAS sergeant and German specialist continued to engage with Sarah professionally, their interactions based on mutual respect for demonstrated competence. Morrison's supporters included several SEALs and Rangers who shared his philosophy of aggressive, instinctive combat tactics. They viewed Sarah's methodical approach as potentially problematic in real-world situations where hesitation could prove fatal. Their concerns weren't entirely unfounded, as combat situations often required immediate action without time for careful calculation. However, other participants recognized the value in Sarah's approach, particularly those with experience in precision long-range shooting, where patience and calculation were essential for success. Her consistency under pressure had impressed many observers, and her technical knowledge had proven valuable during classroom discussions and practical exercises. The day concluded with individual equipment, inspections, and preparation for the next morning's challenge. Sarah maintained her usual thorough routine, despite the increased scrutiny from Morrison and his supporters. She had faced similar situations throughout her career, and understood that allowing the pressure to affect her performance would only validate their skepticism. As lights went out in the barracks, the tension remained palpable. Quiet conversations continued in small groups, with participants discussing the day's events and speculating about how the growing conflict might affect the remainder of the program. Sarah focused on her mental preparation for tomorrow's challenges, knowing that her performance would continue to be closely scrutinized. The stage was set for a more direct confrontation, with both Sarah and Morrison having established their positions and gained supporters within the group. The following days would test not just their shooting skills but their ability to maintain professionalism under increasing interpersonal pressure. The competition had evolved beyond simple marksmanship into a broader test of character and leadership under stress. The confrontation that had been building for days finally reached its climax during the 6th day of the program. The morning began with an advanced stalking exercise, where participants had to approach within striking distance of instructors acting as enemy sentries while remaining completely undetected. The exercise tested patience, fieldcraft, and the ability to remain motionless for extended periods under uncomfortable conditions. Sarah had excelled at this type of challenge throughout her career, her smaller frame and methodical approach proving advantageous in concealment scenarios. She spent nearly 3 hours moving less than 200 yards using every available piece of cover, while avoiding the detection patterns of the roving instructors. Her approach was textbook perfect, demonstrating the patience and discipline that characterized all aspects of her military service. Morrison's attempt at the same exercise reflected his more aggressive personality. His movements were efficient and confident, but his natural impatience with slow, methodical procedures became apparent as the hours passed. While his fieldcraft skills were undeniably excellent, his approach relied more on speed and decisive action than on the extreme patience required for this particular challenge. The difference in their performances became a source of discussion among other participants during the afternoon break. Several commented on Sarah's exceptional concealment abilities, noting techniques they planned to incorporate into their own approaches. Morrison, overhearing these conversations, seemed increasingly frustrated with what he perceived as undeserved praise for skills he considered secondary to real combat effectiveness. The afternoon brought the program's most challenging shooting scenario yet: precision shooting while under simulated enemy fire. Participants had to engage distant targets while instructors used blank ammunition and pyrotechnics to create realistic combat stress. The exercise tested not just marksmanship but the ability to maintain composure and accuracy while experiencing the sensory overload of simulated battle conditions. Morrison approached this challenge with visible enthusiasm, his combat experience having prepared him well for operating under fire. His performance was impressive, maintaining accuracy despite the chaos erupting around his position. The sounds of gunfire and explosions seemed to energize rather than distract him, and his target engagement was both rapid and precise. When Sarah's turn arrived, Morrison positioned himself prominently among the observers, his body language suggesting he expected this challenge to finally expose what he saw as her limitations. The combination of time pressure, noise, and simulated danger represented everything he believed would overwhelm someone he still viewed as primarily a training facility instructor rather than a combat-tested operator. Sarah's initial reaction to the simulation was noticeably different from Morrison's energized response. Where he had seemed to feed off the chaos, she appeared to withdraw into herself, blocking out distractions to focus entirely on her targets. Her first shot came after what seemed like an eternity to observers accustomed to Morrison's rapid engagement style. The delay prompted audible reactions from some participants, with Morrison making a comment about soldiers who freeze up when things get real. His words carried clearly across the observation area, causing several instructors to look in his direction with obvious disapproval of his unprofessional commentary during another participant's exercise. However, Sarah's shot, when it finally came, was perfectly placed despite the challenging conditions. Her second target fell even more quickly as she found her rhythm within the chaos. By the time she engaged her final objective, her shooting had achieved a consistency that impressed even skeptical observers. Her target groupings were actually tighter than Morrison's. Despite the additional pressure of his vocal criticism, the real confrontation began during the post-exercise debrief when Morrison openly questioned whether the Exercise accurately simulated real combat conditions. His comments were ostensibly directed at the instructors, but his repeated references to people who've never been shot at made his actual target obvious to everyone present. Sarah's response was immediate and direct, abandoning the diplomatic approach she had maintained throughout the previous confrontations. She outlined her deployment history and combat experience with a precision that surprised many participants who had been unaware of the extent of her operational background. Her service record included multiple deployments to active combat zones, often in advisory roles that had exposed her to significant danger. Morrison's reaction to this information was visible surprise, followed by increased aggression. Rather than backing down in the face of evidence that contradicted his assumptions, he shifted his attack to question the nature of her combat experience. He suggested that training and advisory roles didn't provide the same kind of pressure as direct combat operations, implying that her experience was somehow less valid than his. The exchange quickly escalated beyond professional disagreement into personal antagonism. Morrison's comments became increasingly pointed, questioning not just Sarah's experience but her right to be considered an equal among the elite operators in the program. His words crossed the line from professional skepticism into disrespectful commentary that violated basic military courtesy. Sarah's response demonstrated the steel beneath her calm exterior. Her voice remained controlled, but her words cut through Morrison's bluster with surgical precision. She systematically dismantled his arguments while maintaining the professional demeanor that he had abandoned. Her defense was not just of herself but of every woman who had served in similar roles, despite facing constant questioning of their capabilities. The confrontation drew intervention from the senior instructor, a colonel whose combat experience exceeded that of any participant in the program. His words were brief but pointed, reminding everyone present that personal conflicts had no place in professional military training. However, the damage had been done, with the group now clearly divided into opposing camps. The evening was subdued, with participants processing the day's events and their implications for the remainder of the program. Sarah maintained her usual equipment maintenance routine, but the stress of the confrontation was evident in the tight set of her shoulders and the mechanical precision of her movements. She had successfully defended herself, but the cost in terms of group dynamics was significant. Morrison spent the evening with his supporters, rehashing the day's events and reinforcing their shared perspective on the situation. His confidence remained intact, but observers noted an edge to his demeanor that suggested the confrontation had not proceeded entirely as he had expected. Sarah's revealed combat experience had clearly caught him off guard, forcing him to reconsider some of his assumptions. The other participants found themselves in an uncomfortable position, forced to choose sides in a conflict that had evolved beyond simple professional competition. The program's cooperative atmosphere had been replaced by obvious tension that threatened to undermine the training objectives. Instructors were clearly concerned about the situation, but reluctant to intervene further unless the conflict began to affect training outcomes. As the day ended, both Sarah and Morrison had established their positions definitively. The polite facade of professional disagreement had been stripped away, revealing the fundamental clash of perspectives that had been building since the program's beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges that would test not just their individual skills but their ability to function, despite the personal animosity that now characterized their interactions. The program's final week arrived with an atmosphere thick with anticipation and unresolved tension. News had spread through the compound about the ultimate challenge that would conclude the training, a complex scenario combining every skill they had practiced over the previous 2 weeks. The exercise would simulate a high-value target elimination in an urban environment, requiring participants to work in pairs while facing multiple variables and time constraints. Sarah learned she would be partnered with Morrison for this final test, a pairing that seemed calculated to force resolution of their ongoing conflict. The assignment came directly from the program director, who made it clear that successful completion required genuine cooperation rather than mere tolerance. Their combined performance would determine not just individual scores, but their standing in the overall program rankings. The mission briefing revealed the complexity of the challenge ahead. Each team would receive intelligence about a high-value target located in a mock urban environment, constructed specifically for advanced training scenarios. The target would be protected by multiple security layers, requiring careful reconnaissance, route planning, and precise timing to achieve mission success without detection. Morrison's initial reaction to their partnership was professional, but cold, focusing entirely on the tactical requirements while avoiding any personal interaction. His approach to mission planning was characteristically direct, favoring rapid infiltration and quick target engagement before security forces could respond effectively. His experience in similar real-world operations gave weight to his tactical recommendations. Sarah's analysis of the mission parameters led to different conclusions about optimal approach strategies. Her study of the target area identified multiple complications that Morrison's aggressive timeline didn't adequately address. Security patrol patterns, civilian foot traffic, and environmental factors all suggested that patient observation and careful timing would be more effective than rapid action. Their planning session became a microcosm of their broader philosophical differences about military operations. Morrison argued for decisive action based on his extensive combat experience, while Sarah advocated for methodical preparation based on her analysis of available intelligence. Neither approach was inherently wrong, but their inability to find common ground threatened to undermine their chances of success. The first day of the exercise involved reconnaissance and initial positioning within the urban training environment. The mock city was impressively realistic, complete with civilian actors, security patrols, and electronic surveillance systems that participants had to avoid or neutralize. Success required not just shooting skills, but comprehensive operational planning and flawless execution. Sarah's approach to reconnaissance was systematic and thorough, spending hours observing target patterns and security routines from concealed positions. Her patience allowed her to identify weaknesses in the defensive setup that more hurried observation might have missed. Her detailed notes documented patrol timing, guard rotation schedules, and optimal shooting positions with military precision. Morrison grew increasingly impatient with what he viewed as excessive preparation time. His instincts, honed by years of time-sensitive operations, urged immediate action once the basic tactical situation was understood. He worried that prolonged observation increased their chances of detection while providing diminishing returns in useful intelligence. The tension between their approaches came to a head during the second day when Morrison suggested they accelerate their timeline and attempt target engagement that afternoon. Sarah's analysis indicated that security measures were heightened during daylight hours, making success significantly less likely. Her recommendation was to continue observation through another complete cycle before making their attempt. Morrison's frustration with the delay was evident, but he grudgingly agreed to continue reconnaissance when Sarah presented compelling evidence about the security improvements that occurred during evening hours. Her methodical documentation had revealed patterns that his more intuitive approach had missed, though he was reluctant to acknowledge the value of her extended observation period. The third day brought unexpected complications when weather conditions deteriorated significantly, creating visibility challenges that would affect long-range shooting. Morrison saw this as an opportunity to execute his preferred close-range engagement strategy, arguing that reduced visibility would help conceal their approach to the target area. Sarah's analysis of the weather impact was more comprehensive, considering how the conditions would affect not just their approach, but also their extraction after mission completion. Her calculations suggested that the poor weather actually favored a longer-range engagement, as security forces would be less effective in pursuing them through the reduced visibility. Their disagreement about engagement strategy finally forced a direct confrontation about their fundamental differences in operational philosophy. Morrison's experience emphasized speed and aggression as survival tools, while Sarah's background stressed patience and precision as keys to mission success. Both approaches had proven effective in their respective contexts, but combining them required compromise that neither had shown willingness to make. The resolution came when Sarah made a proposal that surprised Morrison with its tactical sophistication. She suggested a hybrid approach that would use his preferred rapid infiltration method to reach an advanced position, followed by her methodical target engagement from extended range. The plan incorporated elements of both philosophies, while maximizing their individual strengths. Morrison's evaluation of Sarah's proposal revealed genuine tactical merit despite his personal reservations about working with her. The plan addressed his concerns about prolonged exposure while accommodating her need for precision engagement conditions. His grudging approval marked the first time he had acknowledged the value of her tactical thinking. Their preparation for the final engagement took on a different character as they worked together toward a common goal. Morrison's expertise in rapid movement and infiltration complemented Sarah's precision in long-range engagement planning. The combination of their skills created a more comprehensive operational capability than either could have achieved individually. As evening approached on the fourth day, their mission timeline reached its critical phase. Intelligence indicated that the target would be vulnerable for a brief window during a scheduled security rotation. Success would require perfect coordination between Morrison's infiltration and Sarah's precision shooting, with no room for error or hesitation. Sarah began her final equipment preparations with the same methodical care she had displayed throughout the program. Her rifle was zeroed to perfection, environmental conditions calculated precisely, and contingency plans established for various scenarios. Morrison watched her preparations with growing recognition of the professionalism behind her careful approach. The stage was set for the ultimate test of their abilities and their capacity to work together, despite their personal conflicts. Success would require not just individual excellence, but genuine cooperation between two very different military professionals. The next few hours would determine whether their combined skills could overcome their personal antagonism to achieve mission success. The final evening of the exercise arrived with perfect clarity, as if the weather itself understood the importance of what was about to unfold. Sarah and Morrison moved into position with the synchronization they had developed over the past few days. Their personal conflicts temporarily set aside in favor of mission requirements. The target window would open in exactly 47 minutes, giving them limited time to reach their designated positions. Morrison led their infiltration through the urban training environment with the fluid expertise that had made him legendary among his peers. His movements were economical and precise, finding concealment opportunities that less experienced operators would have missed entirely. Sarah followed closely, adapting her movement style to match his pace while maintaining her own situational awareness of their surroundings. Their designated shooting position was located on the fourth floor of a partially constructed building that provided clear lines of sight to the target area while offering multiple escape routes. The climb to their position tested both physical conditioning and stealth capabilities. As security patrols moved through the area below with increasing frequency as the evening progressed, Sarah established her shooting position with methodical precision, adjusting her rifle's bipod for optimal stability while calculating the environmental factors that would affect her shot. Wind speed was minimal but variable. Temperature had dropped significantly since afternoon, and atmospheric pressure changes required subtle adjustments to her scope settings. Her preparation was thorough but efficient, completing her setup with time to spare. Morrison assumed his role as spotter and security observer, his attention divided between monitoring Sarah's preparation and watching for potential threats to their position. His combat experience made him acutely aware of how quickly operational conditions could change, and his vigilance was focused on identifying problems before they became critical threats to mission success. The target appeared precisely on schedule, moving through the designated area with security escorts that matched their intelligence predictions. Sarah acquired the target through her scope, noting the distance at approximately 830 yards under current atmospheric conditions. The shot was well within her capabilities, but the presence of civilian actors in the area required precise timing to avoid collateral damage. Morrison provided range, confirmation, and wind readings while maintaining observation of the broader tactical situation. His commentary was professional and focused, abandoning the antagonistic tone that had characterized their earlier interactions. The immediate demands of the mission had pushed their personal conflicts into the background, allowing their respective expertise to complement each other effectively. Sarah's breathing settled into the controlled rhythm that preceded her most precise shots. The target moved with predictable patterns, allowing her to anticipate the optimal moment for engagement. Her crosshairs tracked smoothly, compensating for the slight movement while maintaining perfect sight alignment. The mathematics of long-range shooting had become second nature through years of practice and experience. Target acquired. Range 830, wind negligible, Sarah whispered into her radio, confirming her readiness to Morrison and the observing instructors. The moment stretched as everyone involved focused on the precision shot that would determine their success or failure in the exercise. Years of training and preparation condensed into the next few seconds. Morrison's response was immediate and professional. "Clear shot, no movement in the area, you're good to engage on your call." His words carried none of the skepticism that had marked their earlier interactions, replaced instead by the focused professionalism that characterized elite military operations. Whatever personal differences existed between them had been subordinated to mission requirements. The shot came as a surprise even to Morrison, who had been watching Sarah's preparation intently. Her trigger pull was so smooth that the rifle's report seemed almost disconnected from the preceding moments of stillness. The bullet's flight time at this range was significant enough to create tension as everyone waited for confirmation of impact. "Target down. Clean hit center mass," came the radio confirmation from the exercise controllers, followed immediately by Sarah's smooth transition into extraction procedures. Her rifle was secured and ready for movement within seconds, demonstrating the same efficiency that had characterized all aspects of her performance throughout the program. Morrison led their extraction through the predetermined route, his respect for Sarah's shooting evident in his hushed comment about the precision of her shot. The target engagement had been flawless under challenging conditions, validating not just her marksmanship skills but also their combined approach to mission planning and execution. Their cooperation had produced results that exceeded what either could have achieved individually. Their successful extraction to the rally point marked the completion of the exercise and the end of their partnership requirement. As they reached safety, Morrison's demeanor toward Sarah underwent a subtle but noticeable transformation. The skepticism that had characterized his attitude throughout the program was replaced by something approaching professional respect. The immediate post-mission debrief focused on tactical aspects of their performance, with instructors noting the effectiveness of their hybrid approach to the operational challenge. Sarah's precision shooting had been exceptional, but Morrison's infiltration expertise had been equally crucial to mission success. Their ability to combine different operational philosophies had created a more effective overall capability. During the debrief, Morrison made his first positive comment about Sarah's performance, acknowledging the skill demonstrated in her target engagement under difficult conditions. His words were brief and professional, but they represented a significant shift from his previous skeptical commentary. Other participants noticed the change, understanding its significance given their public conflicts. Sarah's response to Morrison's acknowledgement was characteristically measured, accepting his professional recognition without making it seem more significant than it was. Her focus remained on mission analysis and lessons learned, rather than on personal vindication. The successful completion of the exercise was satisfying, but she understood that one successful partnership didn't necessarily resolve all their underlying disagreements. The evening concluded with equipment maintenance and preparation for the final program day, which would include comprehensive debriefings and performance evaluations. Sarah returned to her familiar routine of methodical rifle cleaning and gear inspection, but her movements carried less tension than they had in previous days. The successful mission had validated her approach and demonstrated her ability to perform under pressure. Morrison spent time with his usual supporters, but his comments about the exercise were notably more balanced than his previous critiques of Sarah's capabilities. While he didn't abandon his preference for aggressive operational approaches, he acknowledged that different situations might require different tactical philosophies. His experience with Sarah's methodical precision had expanded his perspective on effective operational techniques. The broader group dynamics had also shifted following their successful partnership. Participants who had chosen sides in their conflict began to recognize that both approaches had merit in appropriate contexts. The exercise had demonstrated that combining different strengths could produce superior results, a lesson that extended beyond individual personalities to operational philosophy more generally. As the final night of the program concluded, the stage was set for the overall program evaluation and the resolution of the tensions that had developed over the previous 2 weeks. Sarah's performance had consistently demonstrated her capabilities, But the ultimate test would be whether the recognition she had earned would translate into lasting respect from her peers and acceptance as an equal among elite operators. The final morning of the program dawned with a sense of completion and reflection, as participants prepared for the comprehensive evaluation that would conclude their 3 weeks of intensive training. Sarah had maintained her disciplined routine throughout, but today carried special significance as the culmination of everything she had worked to achieve since arriving at the compound. The program director called all participants to the main briefing hall for the final assessment and recognition ceremony. Performance rankings would be announced based on cumulative scores across all exercises, with special recognition for outstanding achievement in specific areas. Sarah had performed consistently well throughout the program, but she remained uncertain about how her overall evaluation would reflect the interpersonal challenges she had faced. Morrison arrived at the briefing with his characteristic confidence intact, but observers noted a subtle change in his demeanor when interacting with Sarah. Their successful partnership during the final exercise had clearly affected his perspective, though he maintained the professional distance that had characterized their relationship throughout the program. His supporters watched carefully for signs of how their leader's evolving attitude might influence their own positions. The ceremony began with remarks from the program director about the exceptional quality of the participants and the high standards of performance demonstrated throughout the training. His comments emphasized the value of diverse approaches to tactical challenges, noting that the most successful teams had been those that effectively combined different operational philosophies and individual strengths. Individual performance evaluations began with recognition of outstanding achievement in specific areas. Sarah's name was called for exceptional consistency and precision marksmanship, acknowledging her perfect record in long-range engagement exercises. The recognition was professional and deserved, but it carried special weight given the skepticism she had faced from some participants early in the program. Morrison received recognition for exceptional performance under pressure, specifically noting his ability to maintain effectiveness in high-stress scenarios that had challenged other participants. His acknowledgement was expected given his reputation and consistent performance, but his response to Sarah's recognition was watched carefully by other participants seeking signs of his continued attitude toward her capabilities. The overall program rankings reflected Sarah's consistent excellence across all areas of evaluation. Her final position in the top 10% of participants validated her place among elite operators, while demonstrating that her methodical approach was not just effective, but superior in many contexts. The ranking represented objective confirmation of capabilities that some had questioned, based on preconceptions rather than performance. Morrison's ranking was similarly impressive, confirming his status as an exceptional operator, while highlighting the value of his aggressive, instinctive approach to tactical challenges. However, the briefing also noted that his most successful performances had occurred when working with partners whose different strengths complemented his own capabilities, a reference that clearly included his final exercise partnership with Sarah. During the post-ceremony reception, the atmosphere was markedly different from the tense interactions that had characterized much of the program. Morrison approached Sarah directly, extending his hand in a gesture of professional respect that surprised many observers. Their brief conversation was private, but his body language suggested genuine acknowledgement of her capabilities rather than grudging acceptance. The conversation between Morrison and Sarah was witnessed by several participants, who noted the significant shift from their previous adversarial interactions. Morrison's words were brief but significant, acknowledging that his initial skepticism had been misplaced and recognizing Sarah's exceptional capabilities as demonstrated throughout the program. His admission represented a major evolution in his perspective. Sarah's response was gracious but measured, accepting Morrison's acknowledgement without making it seem more significant than appropriate. She had never sought his approval specifically, but his recognition represented validation from someone whose combat experience and professional reputation were widely respected. The moment marked a resolution of their conflict that satisfied professional standards without requiring personal friendship. Other participants observed this interaction with interest, understanding its significance for future relationships within the elite operator community. Morrison's public acknowledgement of Sarah's capabilities would influence how others viewed her qualifications and her right to be considered an equal among elite military professionals. His words carried weight that extended beyond personal opinion. The broader impact of their resolution extended to the other participants who had aligned themselves with different positions during their conflict. Those who had supported Morrison found themselves reconsidering their assumptions about female operators in elite roles, while those who had recognized Sarah's capabilities from the beginning felt validated in their assessments. The program had served as education for everyone involved. As participants prepared to depart for their respective assignments, the conversations reflected the lessons learned that extended beyond technical skills. Many acknowledged that the program had challenged not just their operational capabilities, but also their assumptions about effective military leadership and the diverse approaches that could lead to mission success. The experience had broadened perspectives in ways that would influence future interactions. Sarah's departure from the compound was markedly different from her arrival 3 weeks earlier. She left with the respect of her peers earned through consistent performance and professional behavior under pressure. Her success in the program would undoubtedly influence opportunities for other women seeking similar elite assignments, opening doors that had previously been difficult to access. Morrison's farewell to Sarah was professional, but notably warmer than their initial interactions. His evolution from skeptic to respectful colleague demonstrated the possibility of changing perspectives based on observed performance rather than preconceived assumptions. Their final exchange suggested that future professional interactions would be based on mutual respect rather than skeptical evaluation. The program's conclusion left lasting impacts on all participants, but particularly on those who had experienced the most significant conflicts and resolutions. Sarah had proven herself capable of performing at the highest levels, while maintaining professionalism, despite personal attacks on her qualifications. Her success validated the principle that performance rather than assumptions should determine professional recognition. Morrison returned to his SEAL unit with expanded perspectives on operational effectiveness and the value of diverse approaches to tactical challenges. His experience working with Sarah had demonstrated that different operational philosophies could complement each other effectively when combined appropriately. The lesson would influence his future leadership approach and his evaluation of subordinates. The ripple effects of their conflict and resolution would extend throughout the special operations community as participants returned to their respective units and shared their experiences. Sarah's success in the program would be noted by commanders responsible for similar assignments, potentially opening opportunities for other qualified women to prove themselves in elite roles. Years later, both Sarah and Morrison would look back on the program as a defining experience that shaped their understanding of professional excellence and mutual respect. Their initial conflict had forced both to examine their assumptions and biases, ultimately leading to growth that made them more effective leaders and operators. The program had succeeded not just in advancing their technical skills, but in developing their capacity for working with diverse team members toward common objectives.